It was a bright afternoon in Beverly Hills, the kind of day when the sun bounced off car windows and made the streets glow. Inside a luxury watch boutique, everything looked perfect. The glass counters sparkled, the floors shone, and each watch sat under its own soft spotlight, like a tiny star. The store smelled faintly of polished leather and expensive cologne. It was quiet, calm, and very controlled, just the way the store's lead employee liked it. His name was Derek. He was in his mid-30s, tall, sharp-looking, and always dressed like he owned the place, even though he didn't. He had been working at the boutique for 4 years, and he treated every watch like a piece of treasure. He believed this store was special, a place meant for people who understood real luxury. He often told new employees, "This isn't a mall store and it's a sanctuary for the elite." Derek wasn't a bad man, but somewhere along the way, he had started confusing politeness with weakness. The longer he worked there, the more he saw the world in 2 categories: people who could afford to be there, and people who couldn't. The bell above the glass door chimed, a soft, elegant sound that usually meant a wealthy customer had arrived. Derek glanced up from polishing a display case and noticed a man stepping inside. At first glance, the man didn't fit the store's usual crowd. He wasn't wearing a suit. His jeans were a little faded and his jacket looked old, not stylishly vintage, just worn. His boots had dust on them and his hair was slightly messy, like he'd been walking for a while. He carried no shopping bags, no assistant, no air of someone used to attention. Derek's instinct kicked in right away. He looked the man up and down and his expression subtly changed. In his mind, this wasn't a potential customer. This was a browser. The kind who wandered in, touched everything, asked questions, and bought nothing. The kind who wasted his time. The man, however, seemed calm. He moved slowly through the store, looking at the display with quiet curiosity. His eyes lingered on a few watches, not with greed, but with admiration. He wasn't loud or demanding. He simply seemed thoughtful. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice gentle but clear. "These are beautiful pieces." Derek gave a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "They are," he said. "Can I help you with something specific?" The man smiled faintly as if he wasn't used to being treated so coldly. "I was just looking," he said. "I've been thinking about getting something special. Maybe as a gift." Derek's smile stiffened. He'd heard that line too many times. "Well," he said in a rehearsed tone, "we usually work by appointment only. Our clients prefer a private experience." The man nodded politely. "Oh, I didn't know that. I just saw the store and thought I'd take a quick look." Derek tilted his head. "Of course. But unfortunately, we're preparing for a private showing soon, so I'd need to ask that you schedule an appointment for another time." He said it kindly but firmly. To anyone listening, it might have sounded professional, but the meaning was clear. He was asking him to leave. The man looked around once more. His eyes fell on a particular watch in the corner. A simple design, elegant, not overly flashy. He seemed genuinely interested. "That one's beautiful," he said softly. Derek followed his gaze and gave a polite laugh. "Yes, that's one of our more refined models. It's quite exclusive." Then after a beat he added, "and quite expensive." Something in the way he said it carried weight. The kind that quietly told the other person, "You probably can't afford it." The man nodded again, still calm. "I see. Well, thank you." He turned and began to walk toward the door. He didn't argue. He didn't get angry. He didn't even show annoyance. He simply smiled, gave a small nod to Derek, and stepped back out into the sunlight. The bell chimed again as the door closed behind him. Derek exhaled, as if relieved. He turned back to the counter, muttering under his breath, "Some people just don't understand what kind of place this is." A young woman named Clara, who worked at the store part-time, had been in the back organizing shipment boxes. She came out just as the man disappeared down the street. She caught a glimpse of his face through the glass door. Something familiar about his posture, his gentle smile. Her eyes widened slightly. "Who was that?" she asked. Derek shrugged. "Some guy who wandered in off the street. Didn't look like he was buying anything." "I sent him off politely," Clara frowned. "Politely?" "As polite as needed," Derek said quickly, already reaching for his cleaning cloth again. Clara walked closer to the window, peering outside, trying to catch another look. "He looked Familiar, she murmured. Was he wearing a dark jacket and boots? Yeah, Derek said, not paying much attention. Why? Clara's eyes grew wider. Wait, I think that was Keanu Reeves. Derek froze mid-wipe. What? She nodded rapidly. I swear I just saw an interview with him. He was dressed exactly like that. The same jacket, same hair, same everything. Derek blinked. You're kidding. I'm serious, Clara said. She grabbed her phone from the counter and started scrolling through pictures. Look, she said, turning the screen toward him. There on the screen was a recent photo of Keanu Reeves walking through Los Angeles wearing the same outfit. Derek's stomach dropped. No way, he said under his breath. That guy? That quiet guy who just walked in? Clara nodded, her face full of disbelief. Yes. He's super humble. Everyone says he doesn't dress like a celebrity. He's always kind to people, too. Derek's throat went dry. He glanced toward the door, half expecting Keanu to come walking back in. Oh my God, he whispered. The store fell silent. The only sound was the faint ticking of the watches in their glass cases. Clara stared at him, half amused, half horrified. You kicked out Keanu Reeves, she said. I didn't kick him out, Derek protested weakly. I just told him we were preparing for an appointment. Clara raised an eyebrow. Which means you kicked him out. Derek sighed heavily, rubbing the back of his neck. I thought he was some random guy. He didn't even look like a millionaire. Clara interrupted. That's kind of the point. He's known for being down to earth. Derek slumped against the counter, his confidence from earlier completely gone. His mind replayed the interaction over and over. The way Keanu had smiled. The way he had said thank you so calmly. The way he hadn't seemed bothered at all, and suddenly, Derek felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. For years, he had prided himself on being a gatekeeper for the brand, someone who could read people, but in that moment he realized he hadn't read anything at all. He had looked at someone's clothes and made a decision, a wrong one. Clara leaned against the wall, crossing her arms. You know, if the manager finds out, he's not going to be happy. Derek groaned quietly. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. But Clara wasn't trying to be cruel. She actually felt bad for him. Look, she said softly, it was an honest mistake. You didn't know. But maybe next time, don't assume. You never really know who's standing in front of you. Her words hit him harder than she meant them to. He nodded slowly, staring at the door again. You're right. Outside, the sun had shifted. The street was busier now. People walking, laughing, cars honking softly in the distance. Somewhere among them, Keanu Reeves was just another person in the crowd, walking quietly, minding his own business. Derek couldn't help but wonder what he must have thought. Maybe he had walked away thinking, just another day, just another store. Or maybe he hadn't thought about it at all. Maybe he was too kind to even care. But Derek cared. He couldn't stop thinking about it. For the rest of the afternoon, every time the door chimed, Derek hoped, secretly, nervously, that it might be him again. That maybe Keanu would come back and he could apologize, explain, do something to make it right. But the door never opened for him again that day. The store manager arrived later in the evening, cheerful as always, and asked how the day went. Derek hesitated. He wanted to tell him what happened but couldn't find the words. He just smiled weakly and said, Quiet day, sir. When the manager disappeared into the office, Clara walked by and whispered, You're going to tell him eventually, right? Eventually, Derek said softly. After I find a way to fix it, she smiled a little. Good luck with that. The store closed at 8. Derek locked the door, turned off the lights, and stood for a moment in the dim glow from the street outside. The display cases shimmered faintly, reflecting his face. He saw himself, perfectly dressed, perfectly polished, and yet he felt smaller than he ever had before. He thought about the man who had walked in wearing old boots and a tired jacket. A man who had smiled despite being dismissed. A man who didn't need luxury to look dignified. Derek whispered to himself, You really messed up this time. He turned off the last light and walked out into the cool night air. The street was quiet now, the earlier shine of the afternoon replaced by soft, amber streetlights. As he walked to his car, his thoughts wouldn't stop. He kept seeing Keanu's calm face, that kind smile, and the way he'd said, Thank you. It wasn't anger Derek felt, it was regret. Deep, heavy regret. And even though he didn't know it yet, that simple mistake, That one quick judgment was going to teach him one of the most important lessons of his life. Because the next time Keanu Reeves walked through that door, nothing in that store would ever be the same again. Derek couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. It wasn't just the awkwardness of dismissing Keanu Reeves earlier that day. It was something deeper. As he walked home that evening, his mind wandered over the exchange again and again. The way Keanu had smiled and nodded as he left the store. The way he'd seemed so unbothered. Derek couldn't decide whether he admired that kind of quiet grace or felt embarrassed by it. When he got home, he dropped his keys on the counter and slumped onto the couch, staring at the TV without really seeing anything. He hadn't bothered to eat dinner. All he could think about was that brief moment in the store, the man who hadn't seemed to care about the way Derek had treated him. It wasn't like most customers who would have reacted with anger or frustration. It wasn't even like the people Derek had met before, who would have been too proud to walk away without a word. Keanu had just walked out like it was no big deal, but it was a big deal to Derek. He couldn't forget the feeling of having made a mistake. It felt like a weight in his chest, one he couldn't shake off. The next day, Derek showed up at work earlier than usual. He had a purpose today, and that purpose was to make things right. It wasn't about getting Keanu back into the store, though part of him desperately wanted that. It was about understanding why he had made such a snap judgment. Why he had assumed that just because someone didn't look the part, they didn't belong. When he arrived at the boutique, Clara was already there. She looked up from the counter and raised an eyebrow when she saw Derek's face. "You okay?" she asked, noticing the look of exhaustion on him. Derek nodded, though it wasn't convincing. "I just need to focus today. A lot of things running through my head." Clara didn't push, but she was good at reading people. She could tell something had changed in him, though she wasn't sure what. "Got a lot of clients coming in." "Maybe. Nothing big, though." He walked toward the back room, trying to clear his mind. As he passed the main showroom, he noticed the glass case with the limited edition watches gleaming under the soft lights. He couldn't help but glance at it. A thought crossed his mind. What if Keanu came back today? He knew he had to face whatever had been gnawing at him since yesterday. Derek had prided himself on his ability to read people, to understand their needs based on a few quick observations. He had often told customers that this is not just a store, it's a place for people who understand true luxury. But the truth was, Derek hadn't understood what true luxury meant at all. It wasn't about the price tag. It wasn't about the clothes someone wore or the way they carried themselves. It was about respect. It was about treating people with kindness no matter who they were or what they looked like. Around noon, the doorbell chimed again, and Derek snapped out of his thoughts. He turned around, half expecting to see another high-end customer. But when he saw who was standing in the doorway, his heart dropped. It wasn't Keanu. It wasn't even anyone remotely close to Keanu. It was just another regular guy, dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans, holding a coffee cup in one hand. He had an easy smile, the kind that made him instantly approachable, but Derek felt his chest tighten. The man had the look of someone who knew he wasn't going to buy anything but wanted to see the watches anyway. He didn't want to make the same mistake again, but he also didn't want to waste his time with someone who wouldn't appreciate the value of the pieces in the store. As he approached the man, Derek's eyes flicked over him. This time, he was determined not to judge too quickly. "Hi there," he said in his usual tone. "How can I help you today?" The man smiled and took a slow look around as if admiring the polished wood and glass. "I've always wanted to take a look at the watches here," he said. "I know I probably can't afford them, but I just wanted to see them up close." Derek felt a little uneasy. He had heard this line before. "I know I can't afford them, but..." It was the perfect way to try to engage with the store's products without really committing to anything. The man seemed to notice Derek's hesitation. He raised an eyebrow, his eyes meeting Derek's in a way that made Derek feel just a little bit embarrassed. "You know, I'm just a guy who likes nice things. Not sure if I'll ever buy one, but it's nice to dream, right?" Derek opened his mouth to respond, but stopped. He didn't want to brush this man off, especially after what had happened with Keanu the day before. He remembered the advice Clara had given him, even if he hadn't admitted it to her. "Don't assume." He let out a breath and tried a different approach. "I totally get it," he said, his voice softer. "Sometimes it's nice just to appreciate things for what they are, even if we can't always have them." The man smiled. Exactly, he said, walking over to one of the displays. I mean, who wouldn't want one of these? Derek felt the ice start to break between them, and for the first time that day he felt like he was doing the right thing. He wasn't thinking about money or appearances. He was just having a conversation with someone who was curious, who was interested. He found himself showing the man around the store, pointing out a few of the watches that had the most intricate designs. He shared a few details about the craftsmanship behind the pieces, telling stories about the designers and the history of the brands. As he spoke, the man listened intently, his eyes lighting up with fascination. He wasn't pretending to be someone he wasn't. He was just someone who appreciated beauty, who liked to learn about the things that intrigued him. By the end of the conversation, Derek realized that he hadn't felt annoyed or impatient. The man had even thanked him for taking the time to explain things. Derek smiled back, surprised by how good it felt to just be kind, to share something he loved without any expectations. When the man left, Derek stood there for a moment, staring at the door. It felt like something had clicked into place inside him. For so long, he had believed that luxury was about exclusivity, about separating people into groups, the ones who could afford it and the ones who couldn't. But today, he'd learned something different. Luxury wasn't about keeping people out. It was about sharing something beautiful and meaningful. It was about making people feel valued, regardless of who they were or where they came from. Just as he was about to turn around and head to the back room, the doorbell chimed again. This time, Derek didn't immediately turn his head. He was determined to keep an open mind. But when he saw who it was, his heart skipped a beat. It was Keanu. Derek felt his breath catch in his throat. He had been hoping for this moment all day, but now that it was here, he wasn't sure what to do. His thoughts raced, his palms began to sweat, and for the first time he felt genuinely nervous. Keanu was standing at the door, looking calm and relaxed, as though nothing had happened the day before. He glanced around the store before locking eyes with Derek. "Hey there," Keanu said, his voice warm and friendly, as though nothing was awkward about the situation. "I just thought I'd come by and take another look around. Maybe you got something new." Derek felt his stomach turn, but he didn't want to make the same mistake again. This time he would be different. He would show Keanu the respect he deserved. "Of course, please come in," Derek said, forcing a smile as he motioned toward the displays. "I've got a few new models that just came in. If you'd like, I can show you around." Keanu gave a small nod as if accepting the invitation. "I'd like that." As Keanu walked further into the store, Derek found himself suddenly calm. For the first time, he realized that maybe the true luxury wasn't in the watches themselves. Maybe it was in the way you treated people, in the way you saw them, and maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to understand what it really meant to share that with others. The soft chime of the doorbell echoed in the quiet store as Keanu stepped further inside, his presence filling the space with a calm energy that Derek hadn't expected. He had to shake off the nervousness he felt, reminding himself that this time he needed to be better. No more mistakes, no more assumptions, just honesty and respect. Keanu walked slowly, taking in the beauty of the boutique. There was a look in his eyes as he scanned the shelves, not one of entitlement, but of genuine interest. Derek had expected the opposite, perhaps a cold stare, a raised eyebrow, or worse, the kind of casual dismissal that sometimes came with celebrity status. But instead, Keanu's demeanor was grounded. He looked like someone who had all the time in the world to appreciate the things around him. Derek felt himself relaxing as he moved closer, eager to make this encounter right. He had already prepared himself to be sincere, to not rush, to not put on airs. "I'm really glad you came back," he said, his voice a bit more genuine than before. "Is there anything specific you're interested in today? Or are you just looking around again?" Keanu turned his head slightly, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I suppose a bit of both," he replied in his soft, familiar voice. "I was hoping to get a better sense of what makes this place different. I was here yesterday and I didn't get a chance to really look at everything. It's kind of overwhelming, you know?" Derek nodded. He could understand that. This store wasn't just about selling watches. It was an experience. The watches were more than just timepieces, and they were symbols of something larger, something intangible. He had always believed that. But today, something about Keanu's words made him think about it differently. It wasn't just about luxury or exclusivity. It was about appreciating what something meant. "I can show you around," Derek offered, feeling a bit more comfortable now. "We've got a few new models, and I think you might like some of them. They're a little more understated, but still very much special." Keanu raised his eyebrows in interest. "Understated, huh?" he said. "That sounds promising. Sometimes less is more, right?" Derek smiled, relieved that Keanu wasn't just browsing out of obligation. There was a real curiosity in his voice, and that made all the difference. "Exactly. Let me show you a few pieces that aren't too flashy but still have a lot of character." They moved over to a display case in the back of the store, where Derek started pointing out the new models. As he spoke, he tried not to let his nerves show. He didn't want to be the kind of person who treated Keanu differently just because of his fame. But at the same time, he didn't want to miss the opportunity to really connect, to show that he was more than just the guy who had made a mistake yesterday. Keanu listened carefully as Derek described the intricate details of the watches, the craftsmanship, the history behind each one, the precision involved. But even as Derek spoke about the watches, he noticed something else. Keanu wasn't just nodding politely or offering small talk. He was really engaged, asking thoughtful questions and even sharing his thoughts on what he appreciated about good design. "You know," Keanu said as he leaned in closer to examine a particularly fine piece, "I've always loved things that have a story behind them. Things that aren't just made to be sold but to be understood." Derek nodded. He couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration. Keanu wasn't just admiring the watch as an object. He was trying to understand what made it meaningful, what gave it value beyond its price tag. "That's exactly it," Derek replied, his voice becoming more passionate. "These watches aren't just made to tell time, they're made to tell stories. Every mark, every design element has a reason behind it. It's about the artistry. It's about tradition." Keanu smiled, his eyes lighting up with interest. "I like that. I've always thought the same way about music. It's not just notes on a page, it's about the feeling behind it, the emotion. If something doesn't speak to you, then it's just a sound, not music." Derek was struck by the way Keanu spoke. He wasn't just agreeing with Derek to be polite. He was genuinely connecting. It was clear that he saw the world the same way, through a lens of appreciation for things that had meaning, not just value. They continued to talk about the watches, with Derek showing Keanu more pieces and explaining the details. The conversation flowed easily, and Derek began to feel as though he was just having a conversation with any other customer. Keanu's celebrity status seemed to melt away in that moment. He was simply a person, a fellow enthusiast who appreciated the same things Derek did. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time, especially not with someone of Keanu's stature. After a while, Keanu paused in front of one of the most expensive watches in the store. It was elegant, timeless, but not overly flashy. It was the kind of piece that made a statement without shouting. Derek had always believed it was one of the store's true masterpieces, but it wasn't for everyone. It was a very specific taste. Keanu's gaze lingered on it for a moment before he turned to Derek. "This one," he said, his voice thoughtful. "It's beautiful, but I wonder, is it the kind of thing you wear every day or is it more of a special occasion piece?" Derek smiled, feeling a sense of pride that Keanu had even asked. "It's a bit of both," he replied. "It's classic enough to be worn every day, but it also has a certain elegance to it that makes it perfect for special moments. It's timeless, you know?" Keanu nodded, clearly impressed. "I like that. It's got a kind of quiet power to it. Not in your face, but still commanding respect," Derek chuckled. "Exactly. I think that's the beauty of it. It doesn't have to shout to be noticed. It's the kind of watch that only those who understand will appreciate." For a moment, the two of them stood in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Derek couldn't help but feel like he was learning something from Keanu. It wasn't just about watches or even about luxury. It was about understanding the quiet beauty of things that weren't obvious to everyone, things that only those who took the time to really look could appreciate. As they continued to talk, Derek began to feel more at ease. Keanu wasn't the intimidating distant celebrity that he had imagined. He was down to earth, humble, and genuinely interested in the world around him. Derek felt grateful for the chance to speak with him, to show him the store and its treasures in a way that was honest and unpretentious. Eventually, Keanu asked, "Do you ever get people in here who just want to buy something flashy? Something that stands out immediately?" Derek laughed. "All the time. But I've learned that the ones who buy based on flash usually don't stick around long. It's the ones who appreciate the craftsmanship, the story behind the piece, who end up coming back. The ones who understand why something is beautiful, rather than just how much it costs. Keanu smiled knowingly. Sounds like you've learned a lot over the years. I have, Derek admitted. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that luxury means big names and big prices. But it's not. True luxury is about understanding what you're buying, why you're buying it, and whether it truly has meaning for you. Keanu seemed pleased by this. I couldn't agree more. It's not about the status it gives you. It's about what it means to you, what it makes you feel when you wear it. Derek smiled, feeling a sense of pride in his words. He had learned that lesson the hard way, but it had stuck with him. It was a lesson he would never forget. As the conversation wound down, Keanu looked at his watch and smiled. Well, I should probably get going, he said, glancing back toward the door. But I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It's been a pleasure, Derek nodded. Of course. It's been great having you here. If you ever want to come back, don't hesitate. Keanu returned the smile, giving a small wave as he turned to leave. I think I might, he said with a grin. Thanks again for the tour. And for not kicking me out this time. Derek laughed, the sound genuine. Anytime. As the door closed behind Keanu, Derek stood there for a moment, letting the weight of the conversation sink in. It had gone better than he'd hoped. He had learned something valuable today, not just about watches, but about people. Keanu hadn't been there to buy anything extravagant or to show off. He had come to appreciate the things that truly mattered. And that, Derek realized, was the lesson he needed to remember. He turned back to the counter, feeling lighter than he had in days. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand what true luxury really meant. The days that followed Keanu's visit seemed to shift something in Derek. It wasn't just about the boutique anymore. It was more than just the watches or the clients. There was something that had clicked inside him after that day. A realization that life wasn't about judging people based on appearances or wealth, but about recognizing the depth in everything, whether it was a person, a watch, or even a simple conversation. He began noticing little things that he had missed before. The way people smiled when they entered the store. The way their eyes lit up when they spoke about the watches. Even if they didn't buy anything, there was something precious about that look. A sense of connection to something bigger than themselves. And for the first time in a long while, Derek realized he was a part of that connection. One morning, a few days after Keanu's visit, Derek was making his usual rounds, checking the displays and making sure everything was perfect. He was lost in thought when the bell above the door chimed again. He looked up, expecting to see another client. But this time it wasn't just a typical customer. Standing in the doorway was a man in his mid-50s, well-dressed in a dark suit, but with an air of quiet authority. His expression was calm, almost too calm. There was something about him that seemed out of place. He didn't have the usual excitement of someone walking into a luxury watch store. No, this man walked in like he had all the time in the world. Not a rush to make a purchase. Not a glance at the watches. Derek, of course, tried to put on his professional smile, walking toward the man with a sense of curiosity. "Good morning," Derek said, keeping his tone friendly. "How can I help you today?" The man gave him a slight nod, but there was no immediate response. He simply stepped further into the store, his eyes scanning the surroundings, but not in a way that suggested interest in the watches themselves. He seemed more, detached. Finally, after a few moments, he turned to Derek. "I'm looking for something unique," he said, his voice steady and calm, almost too deliberate. "Something that stands out but doesn't scream for attention." Derek raised an eyebrow. He had heard this type of request before, but the way the man said it felt different. There was no arrogance, no sense of entitlement, just a quiet request. Derek nodded, a little surprised, and motioned toward one of the glass display cases. "I think I have just the piece for you," he said, moving toward the case with a specific watch in mind. It was understated, simple, but with intricate craftsmanship that made it stand out. The kind of watch that only someone with an eye for fine detail would appreciate. As Derek unlocked the case and pulled the watch out, he glanced at the man. "This piece has a subtle elegance to it," he said, placing the watch in front of him. "It's not flashy, but the quality is immediately noticeable when you hold it. The man looked down at the watch in silence for a long moment. Derek didn't rush him, sensing that this wasn't someone who was quick to make decisions. After a while, the man finally spoke. "It's beautiful," he said softly, almost as if speaking to himself. "But beauty can be deceiving, don't you think?" Derek blinked, unsure if he was meant to respond. But the man wasn't waiting for a reply. Instead, he reached out slowly, running his fingers along the edges of the watch, tracing its contours. It was like he was searching for something, but Derek couldn't quite figure out what. The silence stretched for a few seconds, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like they were both in the moment, just standing there appreciating something without the pressure of a transaction. Finally, the man looked up. "I like it," he said, his voice still calm, but there was something deeper behind the words now. "But I'm not here to buy this watch." Derek's brow furrowed. "Oh, what do you mean?" he asked, confused. The man took a step back, looking at the watch one last time. "I'm here because I want to understand why something like this would mean something to someone," he said. "Not just in terms of wealth, but in terms of significance. Why does it matter? What does it represent?" Derek stood there for a moment, his mind racing. He hadn't expected this. Usually people came in looking for status, something that showed off their success. But this man wasn't interested in that. He was asking questions about meaning, about the deeper value of the object itself. And for a brief moment, Derek felt like he had to find the answer. "It's not about wealth," Derek said, his voice steadier than he expected. "It's about what the watch represents. It's about craftsmanship, about the time and care that goes into creating something like this. It's about appreciating something for what it is, not just for the name or the price tag." The man nodded thoughtfully. "Exactly," he said quietly. "I think that's what I've been looking for, a sense of meaning." Derek felt a strange sense of connection to the man, though he couldn't explain why. There was something in the way he spoke, in the way he seemed to truly see the watch, not just as an object to own, but as something with depth and significance. As they continued to talk, Derek found himself opening up more than he had with any customer before. The man wasn't interested in buying anything, but that didn't matter. They spoke about watches, about art, about the deeper meaning behind the things people chose to surround themselves with. By the end of the conversation, Derek felt like he had learned something new, not just about watches, but about people. This man hadn't come to buy a watch, but he had come to learn, and in doing so, he had made Derek think about his own views on luxury, on value, and on the things that truly mattered. The man finally smiled, offering Derek a slight nod. "Thank you for the conversation," he said. "I'm not sure if I've found what I was looking for, but I certainly have a better understanding of it now." Derek smiled back, feeling a little lighter. "I'm glad I could help," he said, though he wasn't sure how much he had actually helped. The man turned and walked out of the store. But this time, Derek didn't feel the usual relief that came when a customer left. Instead, he felt a quiet sense of appreciation. This had been a different kind of interaction, a meaningful one. As the day wore on, Derek couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. He had learned so much, not just about watches, but about how people viewed the things they owned, and more importantly, how they saw themselves in relation to those things. It wasn't about status. It wasn't about the need to prove anything. It was about finding meaning in the things you chose to surround yourself with, in the connections you made. Later that afternoon, Clara came in for her shift. She noticed the thoughtful look on Derek's face as he sorted through some paperwork. "What's on your mind?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Derek glanced up, smiling softly. "I had an interesting conversation earlier," he said. "It made me think about things a little differently." Clara leaned against the counter, intrigued. "Oh, what happened?" Derek paused for a moment, trying to find the words. "A man came in today. He wasn't interested in buying anything. He just wanted to understand why something like a luxury watch would matter to someone." Clara raised her eyebrows. "That's unusual." "What did you say?" Derek chuckled softly. "I think I said what I needed to say. It's about craftsmanship, history, and appreciating something for what it is." Clara nodded, clearly impressed. "Sounds like a deep conversation. So what did you take away from it?" Derek leaned back in his chair, reflecting on the day. "I think I realized that luxury isn't just about owning something expensive. It's about the meaning behind it. It's about what it represents. And it's about how it makes you feel." Clara smiled, clearly satisfied with his answer. I think you're getting it, Derek. It's about connection, to the things we love and to the people who understand us. Derek nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was on the right path, not just in his job, but in his understanding of life. As the sun began to set and the boutique quieted down, Derek couldn't help but feel grateful. The day had been a reminder that sometimes it wasn't about the sales or the transactions. It was about the moments of connection. And he was beginning to appreciate those more than anything else. The days continued to pass and Derek began to feel more and more at ease in his work. It wasn't that he was any less focused on the boutique or its luxury watches. In fact, he cared about them more than ever. But something about the way he viewed the world had shifted. It wasn't about selling a product anymore. It was about connecting with people, about understanding what they truly valued, what they sought in the things they chose to surround themselves with. Each day, he greeted customers with a new sense of openness, genuinely curious about why they had come into the store. He no longer assumed that every person who walked through the door was looking for something expensive or flashy. Sometimes they were simply looking for something meaningful, and for the first time Derek understood that deeply. One afternoon, as the store began to quiet down, Derek found himself polishing a glass display case. He had just finished rearranging the watches when the bell above the door chimed again. He looked up, expecting another typical customer, but instead his heart skipped a beat when he saw who had walked in. Keanu Reeves. It wasn't that Derek was starstruck, not anymore. He had learned his lesson. But there was something special about seeing Keanu again. It wasn't just because he was a famous actor. It was the way he carried himself, the kindness in his demeanor and the genuine interest he had shown the last time he was there. Keanu wasn't a customer looking to buy something out of a sense of status. He was someone who truly appreciated craftsmanship and meaning. Hey, Derek, Keanu greeted with a friendly smile, his voice warm and relaxed, just as it had been the first time. How's it going? Derek couldn't help but smile back. Good, good. Glad to see you again. How's everything going with you? Keanu shrugged lightly, the same calm energy surrounding him. Oh, just busy with work. But I've been thinking about that conversation we had the other day. You really got me thinking. Derek's curiosity piqued. About the watches? He asked, motioning toward the display cases. Keanu nodded. Yeah, about luxury and the meaning behind things. It's funny, I've spent so much of my life working with people who want something, but not necessarily something that has value beyond its price. I guess that's part of the industry I'm in. But after talking to you, I realize there's a deeper side to it. There's a different way to look at it. Derek's heart warmed. He hadn't expected such a thoughtful response. I'm glad our conversation stuck with you, he said. I've been thinking about it a lot too, actually. Sometimes, it's not about what something costs, but what it means to the person who owns it. Keanu smiled. Exactly. I mean, we all want to feel connected to the things we choose, right? Whether it's a car, a watch, or even a song. It's about what makes us feel something. Derek nodded, feeling that familiar spark of understanding. Exactly. It's not about showing off. It's about finding something that resonates with you. Keanu was quiet for a moment, as if considering something. Then he looked up again, his gaze soft but focused. I think I came in here because I wanted to understand what it means to truly appreciate something. To see the value in something without it being a status symbol. I've spent years working on films, on projects that seem glamorous, but at the end of the day, it's the little things that matter more to me. Derek could sense that Keanu wasn't just talking about watches anymore. This was deeper. It was about life itself. You're right, Derek said, his voice thoughtful. I think the problem with luxury sometimes is that it gets confused with status. But true luxury is about what we personally value. It's about quality, craftsmanship, and most importantly, meaning. That's what makes something valuable, not the name or the price tag, but what it brings to your life. Keanu seemed pleased by Derek's words. That's exactly what I've been thinking about. And it's funny how something as simple as a watch can remind you of that. How something so small can make you stop and reflect. Derek smiled, feeling the connection between them growing stronger. It wasn't just about the watches anymore. It was about the shared understanding between two people who had both been searching for meaning in different ways. Is there anything you're looking for today? Derek asked, almost as an afterthought. Keanu paused, his eyes scanning the store. Not really, he replied. I just wanted to come in and talk, see how things were going. Maybe learn something new, Derek chuckled. You've definitely taught me a few things already. I didn't expect to get so deep when I first started working here. Keanu laughed softly, his tone light. Well, sometimes it's the simple things that make the biggest difference. As they stood there, talking about life, meaning, and everything in between, Derek realized that his entire perspective had shifted. This wasn't just a store. It wasn't just about selling watches. It was about people, connections, and understanding. Eventually, Keanu glanced at his watch and sighed. I should probably head out, he said. But I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciated our conversation. It's not every day you meet someone who gets it. Derek nodded, genuinely touched by Keanu's words. Thank you for coming by, he said. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Keanu smiled warmly, then turned to leave. As the door closed behind him, Derek stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle around him. Something about that conversation had made him feel lighter, more at peace with himself. It wasn't just about watches or sales or luxury. It was about something deeper, something that could be found in the quiet moments, in the connections made without expectation. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Derek went through the motions of his work, but his mind kept returning to the conversation he'd had with Keanu. It had been a simple exchange, but it had taught him something valuable, that life wasn't about chasing after the next big thing or accumulating possessions. It was about appreciating the little things, the meaningful things, and finding connections along the way. As the store prepared to close for the night, Clara approached Derek with a curious expression on her face. Hey, what's up? She asked, noticing that he seemed lost in thought. Derek looked up and smiled. I had another conversation today, one that reminded me why I'm here. Clara raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? Derek paused, organizing his thoughts. It's funny. I've been thinking about all the customers who come through here, and the conversations we have. And for the first time, I think I really understand what this place is about. It's not just about the watches or the luxury or the price tags. It's about people. It's about what they value and how those things reflect who they are. Clara smiled softly. Sounds like you've had an epiphany. I guess I have, Derek said, laughing lightly. It's strange. I came here thinking I was just going to sell watches. But now I realize it's about so much more than that. Clara nodded, her expression thoughtful. It's about the stories behind the things we choose, the meaning we give them. It's the same with anything in life. Derek felt a deep sense of gratitude toward Clara. She had been with him through all the ups and downs, and now it felt like they were both on the same page, understanding the true essence of what they were doing. As the store closed for the night, Derek walked outside, breathing in the cool evening air. The city was quiet, the streets illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights. He felt at peace, knowing that he had learned something valuable, not just about luxury, but about life itself. He wasn't in a rush anymore. He didn't need to chase after success or approval. He understood that true meaning was found in the moments of connection, in the quiet appreciation of the things that truly mattered. And for the first time in a long time, Derek felt like he was exactly where he needed to be.